The Broken Wanderer. The asteroid mining station, Haven's Rest, floated in the darkness between dead worlds, forgotten by the corporations that had built it, and abandoned by the miners who had once called it home. Elena Vasquez wiped her oil-stained hands on her coveralls and squinted at the ancient diagnostic screen that flickered like a dying star. At 45, she had spent more years fixing broken machines than she cared to count, and the thrill of solving mechanical puzzles had long since settled into comfortable routine. The station's artificial gravity hummed beneath her feet, a sound she had grown so accustomed to that silence would have felt wrong. Outside the reinforced windows of her repair bay, the void stretched endlessly, punctuated only by the occasional cargo hauler making its way to the inner colonies. Haven's Rest wasn't a destination anymore. It was barely a waypoint. Most ships passed by without stopping, their crews unaware that anyone still lived in the rusted corridors and patched-together modules. Elena preferred it that way. After the mining boom collapsed and the corporate ships stopped coming, only a few dozen souls remained. They were the stubborn ones, the ones who had nowhere else to go, or like Elena, the ones who found peace in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. She ran the only repair facility within 3 systems, fixing whatever broke down for whoever happened to need help. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the life support running and food in the synthesizers. The proximity alarm chimed, a rare sound that made Elena look up from the atmospheric recycler she was rebuilding. Through the bay windows, she could see a small craft approaching, its hull scarred and blackened by what looked like weapons fire. The ship moved with the jerky, uncertain motion of failing thrusters, barely maintaining course toward the station's docking ring. Elena activated the communication system, her voice echoing through the repair bay. "Unknown vessel, this is Haven's Rest. Your approach vector looks unstable. Do you require assistance?" The response came after a long pause, transmitted in heavily accented but understandable human standard. "Haven's Rest, this is Kex 9. I require immediate mechanical assistance. My power core is failing." The voice was strange, too precise and measured to be entirely human, but Elena had heard stranger things in the Outer Rim. Pirates, refugees, and drifters all passed through occasionally, and she had learned not to ask too many questions. "Copy that, Kex 9. Bay 3 is open for emergency docking. I'll meet you there." Elena gathered her tools and made her way through the station's maze of corridors, past the empty habitation modules and the hydroponic gardens that a few residents still maintained. The docking bay was cold and poorly lit, but the atmosphere was stable. She watched through the control room window as the damaged ship limped into the bay, its landing struts extending with grinding mechanical protests. When the airlock cycled and the ship's occupant emerged, Elena understood why the voice had sounded so unusual. The being that stepped onto the deck was clearly artificial, though unlike any android she had ever seen. It stood nearly 7 feet tall with a sleek silver chassis that gleamed despite obvious damage. Its face was almost human in proportion, but the features were too perfect, too symmetrical. Blue optical sensors glowed where eyes would be, and when it moved, Elena could hear the soft whir of servo motors. The android's clothing was practical but well-made, a simple jumpsuit that might have been expensive once but now bore the stains and tears of hard travel. Most striking was the way it carried itself. Despite obvious mechanical problems, there was dignity in its posture, a sense of purpose that reminded Elena of the career soldiers she had known in her youth. "I am Kex 9, the android said, its voice carrying the same precise cadence she had heard over the radio. "I apologize for the unscheduled arrival. My ship's power systems are operating at 17% efficiency. I calculate approximately 6 hours before complete shutdown." Elena walked around the android, noting the damaged panels on its torso and the way its left arm hung slightly loose at the shoulder. "Looks like you've been through a rough patch. What happened?" "Pirate attack in the Kepler system," Kex 9 replied without hesitation. "They were interested in my cargo rather than my welfare. I managed to escape, but not without damage." Elena nodded. Pirates were common in the outer systems, preying on anyone unlucky enough to travel alone. "Well, let's see what we can do. My diagnostic equipment should be able to interface with your systems if you're willing." The android hesitated for a moment, its optical sensors focusing on Elena's face. "I must be transparent about my financial situation. I can offer 200 standard credits for repairs. I understand this may not cover extensive work." 200 credits wouldn't cover the cost of Elena's basic diagnostic tools, let alone actual repairs. She had seen this before. Desperate travelers with more problems than money trying to stretch their resources far enough to reach safety. The smart business decision would be to send Kex-9 away, but Elena had never been particularly good at smart business decisions. "Let's run the diagnostics first," she said instead. "Then we'll figure out what we can do." Elena led Kex-9 to her workshop, where banks of diagnostic equipment lined the walls between workbenches covered in half-finished projects. She gestured to a medical-style examination table that she had modified for android work. "If you're comfortable with it, I can get a better reading if you're lying down." Kex-9 complied without hesitation, settling onto the table with mechanical precision. Elena connected her diagnostic cables to access ports on the android's chassis, and immediately her screens lit up with data streams. What she saw made her whistle low under her breath. The android's condition was worse than she had thought. The power core was indeed failing, but that was just the beginning. Internal damage from the pirate attack had caused cascading system failures throughout Kex-9's body. Hydraulic leaks, damaged neural pathways, corrupted memory sectors, and a dozen other problems that would require days of work to properly address. "The damage is extensive," Elena said carefully, not wanting to alarm her patient. "Your power core is the immediate concern, but there are other systems that need attention." Kex-9's optical sensors dimmed slightly. "I suspected as much. What can be accomplished with my available resources?" Elena looked at the diagnostic readouts again, then at the android lying trustingly on her table. The basic power core replacement would cost nearly 1,000 credits in parts alone. Even a temporary patch job would exceed Kex-9's budget. But something about the android's quiet dignity reminded her of her father, who had taught her that helping others was worth more than profit margins. "I think I can stabilize your power core and patch the worst of the hydraulic leaks," she said. "That should get you where you're going." Over the next several hours, Elena worked steadily on Kex-9's systems. What she had described as basic repairs were actually comprehensive overhauls. She replaced not just the damaged power core, but upgraded it to a more efficient model she had been saving for her own projects. The hydraulic leaks required rebuilding entire subsystems, work that was both time-consuming and expensive. As she worked, Kex-9 proved to be surprisingly good company. The android was knowledgeable about ship systems and curious about Elena's techniques. They discussed engineering principles, the challenges of maintaining technology in deep space, and the peculiarities of life on a forgotten asteroid station. "You have considerable skill," Kex-9 observed as Elena carefully calibrated a new neural interface. "Your techniques are more advanced than I would expect in such a remote location." Elena smiled, focused on her work. "I used to work for Titan Industries back before the corporate consolidations, spent 15 years maintaining their deep space exploration fleets. When they downsized, I ended up here." "Why did you remain? Surely your skills would be valued in the core systems." The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. Elena paused in her work, considering how to explain the peace she had found in this forgotten corner of space. Sometimes the best place to be useful is where no one else wants to go. Out here, every repair matters. Every ship I fix might be carrying medicine to a colony, or bringing news to isolated families, or just giving someone a chance to make it home. Kex-9 was quiet for a long moment. "You find purpose in service to others." "I suppose I do." When Elena finally stepped back from her work, nearly 12 hours had passed. Kex-9's systems were running at optimal efficiency, better than they had probably functioned since the android's creation. Every damaged component had been repaired or replaced, every system calibrated to perfection. It was the kind of comprehensive overhaul that should have cost thousands of credits and taken a full maintenance crew days to complete. Kex-9 sat up slowly, testing each system as it came online. The android's movements were fluid now, with none of the hesitation that had marked its arrival. "This is remarkable. I am operating at full capacity." Elena began cleaning her tools, uncomfortable with praise. "Just did what needed doing. Your ship should be ready too. I had my maintenance drones patch the hull and upgrade your power couplings." "I cannot adequately compensate you for this level of service," Kex-9 said, standing and reaching for a credit chip. 200 credits is insufficient." Elena waved away the payment. "Keep your credits. You'll need them for supplies and fuel." Kex-9 stared at her with those unsettling blue optical sensors. I do not understand. You have provided services worth thousands of credits. You must accept compensation. Consider it a gift from one traveler to another, Elena said firmly. Everyone needs help sometimes. The android was silent for nearly a full minute, processing this information in whatever way artificial minds worked through complex problems. Finally, Kex-9 spoke. You have shown me kindness without expectation of reward. This is unusual in my experience. Maybe you've been traveling in the wrong circles. Kex-9 carefully placed the credit chip back in its storage compartment. I am returning to my creator father after a long mission. He will want to know about this encounter. Safe travels, Elena said, already turning back to her workbench. And Kex-9, try to avoid any more pirates. The android nodded formally. I will remember your generosity, Elena Vasquez of Haven's Rest. After Kex-9 departed, Elena returned to her routine maintenance tasks. The atmospheric recycler still needed rebuilding, and a cargo hauler was due in 3 days with a faulty navigation computer. Life on Haven's Rest continued its quiet rhythm, marked by the steady hum of life support systems and the occasional arrival of ships in need of repair. Elena didn't give the android much more thought. She had helped countless travelers over the years, and while Kex-9 had been more polite than most, the encounter didn't seem particularly significant. She had no way of knowing that the android she had repaired carried data crucial to preventing a war between species, or that its creator was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. In the vast emptiness of space, acts of kindness often went unnoticed. But sometimes, Elena would learn, they echo across the stars in ways no one could predict. The revelation. 3 days after Kex-9's departure, Elena was elbows deep in a particularly stubborn plasma conduit when the proximity alarms began screaming. She pulled her head out of the access panel, wiping sweat from her forehead, and looked toward the viewport. What she saw made her drop her plasma cutter. Ships were emerging from hyperspace all around Haven's Rest. Not the usual small cargo haulers or private vessels, but massive warships with sleek, organic-looking hulls that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Elena had never seen their like before, but she recognized military formation when she saw it. Dozens of vessels arranged in perfect geometric patterns, with one massive command ship at the center that dwarfed everything else in the system. The station's communication system crackled to life, but instead of the usual automated hails, a voice spoke in fluent human standard with an accent Elena couldn't place. Haven's Rest Station, this is Admiral Thex Prime of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. We request permission to approach. We come seeking an individual named Elena Vasquez. Elena's blood ran cold. In her 15 years on Haven's Rest, no one had ever come looking for her specifically. Corporate debt collectors had given up years ago, and she had no family left in the core systems. The idea that an alien fleet had traveled to this forgotten corner of space to find her was terrifying. Station Commander Morrison's voice came over the internal communication system, tight with barely controlled panic. Elena, get to the command center, now! Elena dropped her tools and ran through the station's corridors, her mind racing. The other residents she passed looked frightened, huddled in doorways and speaking in hushed whispers. News of the fleet's arrival was spreading quickly through Haven's Rest's small community. The command center was chaos when Elena arrived. Morrison, a grizzled former cargo pilot who had taken the job because no one else wanted it, was staring at sensor readings that made no sense. The fleet wasn't just big, it was impossibly advanced. Their ships showed energy signatures unlike anything in human space. Elena, what the hell did you do? Morrison demanded as soon as he saw her. I've got 67 alien warships out there and they're asking for you by name. I don't know, Elena said honestly. I haven't done anything that would attract this kind of attention. The communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. Morrison activated the viewer, and Elena found herself looking at an alien face unlike anything she had imagined. Admiral Thex Prime was clearly not human, with features that seemed to blend reptilian and avian characteristics. Golden scales covered high cheekbones, and amber eyes with vertical pupils regarded Elena with unmistakable intelligence. When the alien spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested a completely different vocal structure from humans. Elena Vasquez, I am Admiral Thex Prime, Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet and Creator Prime of the Kex series androids. 3 days ago, you encountered my child, Kex-9. We need to speak. Elena's confusion must have shown on her face because the Admiral continued. Perhaps it would be better if we spoke in person. I request permission to come aboard your station with a small diplomatic party. Morrison looked at Elena with wide eyes. The idea of hosting alien diplomats on Haven's Rest was absurd. Their small station had no facilities for formal meetings, no security protocols for alien contact, and no idea what they were getting into. We're not equipped for diplomatic contact, Elena said to the screen. This is just a repair station. Admiral Thex Prime's expression shifted in what might have been amusement. I am not interested in diplomatic formalities, Elena Vasquez. I am interested in thanking the person who saved my child's life. An hour later, Elena stood in the station's main docking bay, which had been hastily cleaned and decorated with every bit of formal bunting Morrison could find. A small alien shuttle had docked, sleek and elegant in design, with the same organic curves as the larger ships. When the airlock opened, Admiral Thex Prime emerged wearing what appeared to be military dress uniform, followed by two other Zephyrians in simpler attire. The Admiral was impressive in person, standing nearly 8 feet tall with the graceful bearing of someone accustomed to command. But what struck Elena most was the way Thex Prime moved. Despite the alien features, there was something familiar in the Admiral's posture and gestures. Kex 9 is your child, Elena asked without preamble. Admiral Thex Prime's amber eyes focused on her with startling intensity. Among my people, the relationship between creator and android is considered sacred. Kex 9 is not merely a machine I built, but a being I brought into existence and raised. In every way that matters, yes, Kex 9 is my child. The Admiral gestured to one of the accompanying Zephyrians, who stepped forward with a device Elena didn't recognize. May I show you something that will help explain why your actions were so significant? Elena nodded, and the device projected a three-dimensional hologram into the air between them. The image showed a star map with two regions highlighted in different colors. One area was marked with human symbols, the other with Zephyrian script. For the past 3 years, Admiral Thex Prime explained, our two species have been engaged in delicate peace negotiations. There have been misunderstandings between our peoples, border conflicts, trade disputes, and communication failures that threatened to escalate into full warfare. The hologram shifted, showing fleet movements and battle lines. Elena could see how close the two species had come to open conflict, with hundreds of worlds hanging in the balance. Kex 9 was carrying the final peace accords between our governments, the Admiral continued. Diplomatic documents that took months to negotiate, signed by both human and Zephyrian leadership. If those documents had been lost, Elena began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. There would have been war. Yes, and not just between our species. Other alien civilizations have been watching our negotiations. Success would have opened peaceful contact with dozens of other races. Failure would have convinced them that humans and Zephyrians are too aggressive for diplomatic contact. The Admiral touched a control on the projection device, and the image changed to show Kex 9's internal diagnostics from before Elena's repairs. The android had been hours away from complete system failure. When Kex 9 arrived here, its primary memory cores were already beginning to fail. In 6 hours, the peace accords would have been corrupted beyond recovery. The android would have ceased functioning, and with it, any hope of preventing war between our peoples. Elena stared at the diagnostic data, recognizing her own repair work in the stabilized systems. I just fixed what was broken. You did far more than that, Admiral Thex Prime said, and for the first time the formal military bearing cracked slightly. Kex 9 told me about your conversation. You could have asked for payment in advance. You could have demanded to know what the android was carrying. Instead, you saw a being in need and chose to help. The Admiral paused, seeming to struggle with emotions that didn't translate well across species. My child reported that you refused payment entirely, that you told Kex 9 to consider the repairs a gift from one traveler to another. Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't that big a deal. It was everything, Admiral Thex Prime said firmly. Because of your kindness, Kex 9 delivered the peace accords safely. Our governments have ratified the treaties. The war that would have consumed billions of lives will not happen. The magnitude of it hit Elena like a physical blow. Her simple decision to help a stranded android had prevented a galactic war. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds would live in peace because she had chosen kindness over profit. I had no idea, she whispered. Admiral Thex Prime stepped closer, and Elena could see something like paternal pride in those alien features. That is precisely why your actions were so remarkable. You helped without knowing the consequences, without expectation of reward. You embodied the best of what your species can be. The Admiral gestured to the other Zephyrians, who began unpacking cases Elena hadn't noticed before. The Zephyrian Empire wishes to offer you a gift in return, not payment, for no amount of wealth could repay what you have done, but a token of our gratitude. The first case contained technology Elena couldn't begin to identify, devices that hummed with barely contained energy and displays that showed information in scripts she couldn't read. The second case held what appeared to be star charts, but with far more detail than any human maps she had seen. These are the coordinates and access codes for Zephyrian space, Admiral Thex Prime explained. If you choose to accept, you would be welcome among our people as an honored guest. Our scientists would share their knowledge with you. Our engineers would learn from your techniques. Elena looked at the alien technology, trying to process what was being offered. Access to an advanced alien civilization, knowledge beyond human understanding, the chance to explore worlds no human had ever seen. There's more, the Admiral continued. The peace accords include provisions for cultural and technological exchange between our species. We need someone to serve as a liaison, someone both species can trust, someone who has already proven that wisdom and kindness matter more than politics. Elena understood what was being offered, not just wealth or technology, but a chance to shape the future of human-alien relations, the opportunity to ensure that the peace she had unknowingly saved would last. But as she looked around the docking bay of Haven's Rest, she thought about the dozen residents who called this forgotten station home. The maintenance drones that kept their life support running, the hydroponic gardens that fed them, the sense of community that had grown in this isolated corner of space. I need time to think, Elena said finally. Admiral Thex Prime nodded with what seemed like approval. Of course, this is not a decision to be made quickly. We will remain in system for as long as you need. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to return to their ship, Elena had one more question. Where is Kex 9 now? The Admiral's expression softened in a way that transcended species barriers. Safe at home, functioning perfectly thanks to your repairs. Kex 9 sends gratitude and hopes to see you again. After the aliens departed, Elena stood alone in the docking bay, surrounded by technology beyond her comprehension and faced with a choice that would define the rest of her life. Outside the viewport, the Zephyrian fleet waited patiently among the stars, while inside the station her small community went about their daily routines, unaware that their neighbor had just been offered the opportunity to change the galaxy. The choice that changed everything. Elena spent 2 sleepless nights walking the corridors of Haven's Rest, thinking about Admiral Thex Prime's offer. The alien technology sat in the docking bay under guard, seeming to hum with possibilities she could barely imagine. Every time she looked at it, she felt the pull of adventure, the chance to explore technologies and worlds beyond human understanding. But every time she passed the hydroponic gardens where old Mrs. Chen tended her tomatoes, or saw Morrison struggling with a failing atmospheric processor, she remembered why she had stayed on Haven's Rest in the first place. This community needed her. These people had become her family over the years, and the idea of abandoning them felt wrong. On the 3rd morning, she made her decision. Elena requested another meeting with Admiral Thex Prime, this time in the station's modest conference room. The Admiral arrived with the same diplomatic escort, but Elena sensed a different energy this time, something more personal and less formal. I've thought about your offer, Elena began, and I'm honored by your trust, but I can't accept it as it stands. Admiral Thex Prime's vertical pupils dilated slightly, the only sign of surprise. May I ask why? Elena gestured toward the viewport, where Haven's Rest's corridors stretched into the distance. This station has 12 permanent residents. They're miners, engineers, hydroponic farmers, and maintenance workers who stayed behind when the corporations pulled out. They're good people who've built a life together in a place nobody else wanted. She paused, organizing her thoughts. If I leave to become your liaison, do you ever regret it? Morrison asked. Not taking their original offer? You could be exploring alien worlds right now instead of managing diplomatic protocols. Elena looked around at the bustling activity of the station, at the mix of human and Zephyrian personnel working together, at the friends who had become colleagues in humanity's greatest adventure. Not for a second, she said. The next morning brought Elena's favorite part of her new routine. In the Enhanced Communication Center, she activated a secure channel to Kex 9. who was serving as cultural advisor to the Zephyrian delegation on Earth. The android's face appeared on the screen, its features as precise and dignified as Elena remembered. But there was something different now, a warmth in the optical sensors that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Elena," Kex-9 said. "How are the new plasma conduits performing?" "Flawlessly," Elena replied. "Your people's engineering is impressive. I'm learning something new every day." "As am I," Kex-9 said. "Humans continue to surprise me with their ingenuity and adaptability." Elena leaned back in her chair, looking through the viewport at a Zephyrian research vessel docked alongside a human diplomatic transport. Representatives from a dozen other alien species had begun arriving as well, drawn by the success of the Human-Zephyrian alliance. Haven's Rest was becoming the unofficial capital of interspecies cooperation. "Kex-9," she said, "do you ever think about that day you arrived here, when your power core was failing?" The android was quiet for a moment, processing the question with mechanical precision. "Every day," Kex-9 replied finally. "I calculate that without your intervention, there was a 94.7% probability of total system failure before I could reach home. And now look where we are." Indeed, a damaged android and a kind engineer changed the course of galactic history. Kex-9 paused. "Admiral Thex Prime often says that the universe has a sense of humor. Perhaps that is true." Elena smiled. "Maybe it does." As the communication ended, Elena turned back to her work. There were new life support systems to calibrate, diplomatic protocols to establish, and a steady stream of representatives from across the galaxy to accommodate. It was challenging work, but deeply satisfying in a way that pure engineering had never been. Through her office viewport, she could see the stars that had once seemed so distant and empty. Now they were filled with possibility, connected by networks of communication and cooperation that grew stronger every day. Ships arrived regularly carrying scientists, diplomats, and engineers eager to participate in the greatest collaborative effort in galactic history. Elena thought about the chain of events that had brought them here, an android in need, a simple decision to help, and the ripple effects that had spread across the galaxy. She had learned that kindness was not just a personal virtue, but a force that could reshape the universe itself. In the end, she reflected, the greatest adventures were not always found by traveling to distant worlds. Sometimes they began right where you were, with a simple choice to see others not as strangers but as fellow travelers deserving of dignity and help. Haven's Rest hummed around her with the activity of a dozen species working together toward a better future. And Elena Vasquez, former corporate engineer turned galactic diplomat, smiled as she returned to work, knowing that the best stories were still being written among the stars.